Great day, beautiful Vallejo. We're here with Mr. Robert McConnell, Vallejo Mayor, and always happy to take time. He takes his time to spend with me and answer some of my goofy questions. But I think we all appreciate him keeping us informed. Good day to you, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon to you, and it's good to be with you and with your viewers again today. And there aren't any goofy questions; there are just sometimes goofy answers that don't come out the right way.
You're the best, Mr. McConnell. We're gonna get right into it. A very important topic right now in Vallejo is what are we gonna do with Mare Island or 400 Mare Island Way, which is the current location that sits at the marina, like right in front of the marina. And currently, it's in debate whether we should put the police station there. They had a meeting on March 9th, I believe, and I just was wondering what happened at that meeting that was discussed or
Well, a whole lot of things happened at that meeting. We got some insight into the views and the positions of each council member that are maybe different than some of them had previously thought to be. We heard a lot of information, but we also heard a lot of lack of information. And at the end of the meeting, basically, we concluded that we don't have a clear path forward on this yet, nor do we have unanimity amongst the council. There's a lot of different views on it. We don't have adequate information from our staff as to the numbers yet, so it's going to be a continued ongoing review of this situation. At the moment, the upshot of that meeting was that staff said that they would bring it back to us in the form of the budget discussion. That budget discussion will probably occur in maybe May and the end of June. We have to adopt the budget by the end of June so that it can take effect the 1st of July, of course. The real question is, can we afford what we already bought? I mean, we bought it, it's ours. Now what are we going to do with it? And that is the $64,000 question, to quote a former prize show from way back when. So there are different opinions on it. Some people believe that we should certainly move the police department into that. Others have equal and adamant beliefs against that very proposition. Some people feel we should sell the building because the market has certainly increased lately. That's never been too well in depth reviewed or examined. Some believe we should lease out the building. There is one tenant in the building, the Veterans Administration, that pays $250,000 a year and uses about 25% of the building, and they will continue to stay there for some time. There are some people who believe we shouldn't be using that building for the police department at all. We should move the police department over to JFK Library Building, somewhere else in town. There are a lot of suggestions that have come up. And of course, many of those suggestions, as they come up, are actually being looked at by other building occupiers, and some of those buildings have opened and closed already. For instance, the building over by Raley's was one that was suggested, and it's already in escrow. So that's probably been taken off the board already. The Food for Less building is being subdivided for a medical dispensary that wishes to move from elsewhere on Somerville Boulevard out there, but they won't take up the entirety of that building. Some people have suggested the former Walmart building on Sonoma Boulevard. Others feel it's too far away. I mean, there's a lot of mixed feelings. Nobody has a clear understanding of what we're going to do yet. And we're probably all looking for answers. One suggestion was that we take the police department and move it into the City Hall building and move the City Hall staff over to the 400 Mare Island Way building. It's a switch, if you will. Another suggestion has been that we move the Public Works Department, which is in back of the present police building at 111 Amador Street, and move it over to either Mare Island or to South Vallejo, and then expand the police department into the entirety of the lot that those two departments currently occupy. There is probably fairly widespread agreement that the building at 111 Amador Street is not adequate for what we're using it for. It's only 20,000 square feet. Vacaville just built a police building. It's 70,000 square feet, which is larger than the 60,000 in the 400 Mare Island Way building. Vacaville is smaller than we are. And their police department has already said it's too small for them.
It's
They
70,000.
At 70,000. So probably, if you really want to get honest about it, we probably really should be looking at a building somewhere around 90 to 110,000 square feet for what we would use it for over the course of the next 40, 50 years. Remember, this is not what we're going to do with it today. It's what we're going to do with it in the future. And the building at 400 Mare Island Way, well, is certainly a lot larger than the 20,000 square foot we have now. Is probably, in my opinion, not quite adequate either. I've, of course, always maintained that we need to build a building from scratch. Some people believe that that's more expensive than we can afford. Some people believe that in the end you get a better building. And the reality is we haven't done the due process in-depth study of all of this. It probably should have been done before the building was actually purchased. But reality is we own the building. It's ours. What are we going to do with it now? We got it. What do we do?
Now, if city employees move in, whether it's public works or the police, does the city benefit financially? Like, is there a revenue that is produced by like the police? I mean, what I'm getting at is, like, would we benefit more by leasing it to some tech company, or do we benefit financially? Like, what puts us in the hole? Does the police? I mean, because the police, I don't know. Do we get money from the tickets and?
Well, police programs do produce some revenue, but it's relatively one of the smallest revenue producers in the city budget. So that's not a justification for moving the building or not moving the building. If we were to lease it, we would certainly obtain the rent payments over a period of time. And some argue that with a fully leased building at a very profitable rate, it's a lot easier to sell it than it is to sell it with only one tenant occupying 25% of the property. So that's something that I would defer to commercial real estate brokers on, as to the desirability of that. Some opine that, well, the internet has now pretty well taken over retail, and as a result of COVID, you can see what's happening to all the office buildings in San Francisco that are probably going to be turned into condos. So maybe the era of commercial buildings as we know it is no longer valid. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns here. And we probably won't begin to realize a clearer picture until after COVID has passed through. We start to see the fallout in the economy, how many people are going to really lose their jobs, what businesses are going to come back, which ones are not going to come back. Are we going to have people permanently working from home or working from other cities? Actually, we have had here in Vallejo a lot of people move into this city from San Francisco and Oakland, again, because housing is more affordable, of course, but also there's the perception that you don't have to be in those urban settings just because of your job. If you like the amenities that a city offers, well, that's a great reason to be there. But then look at what you're paying for housing. It's always been more expensive in San Francisco, no matter where you look at it in point of time. Whether it's in my parents' day in the 30s and the 40s, or whether it's in my days later on or today. It's just more expensive to live there, period. And it always will be.
What happens if Vallejo were to sell the building and then use the money to hook up the fiber optics so we could give that high internet access to companies, like to be able to attract? I mean, is that something we could do? Does that sound?
Well, I'm a big supporter of the fiber optic network. I don't believe we've ever used it to the extent the capacity and the promise of it has. And so I'm a little disappointed in the use of that system. It's something I believe is a major selling point to attract not only tech, but heavy data-driven businesses to Vallejo. And of course, now that we realize that you don't have to be in San Francisco or Oakland or Los Angeles, Vallejo is certainly becoming more attractive, and that's a selling point. As far as taking the proceeds of the sale of that building and putting it into the fiber optic system, I don't believe I would support that. I'd have to think more about it, but off the top of my head, it doesn't appear to be a reasonable solution. The reality is we need to do something about the building we have now at 111 Amador Street. And if we turn 400 Mare Island Way into our police department or any other kind of department, we still have to deal with what's left at 111 Amador Street. It's still got a bad HVAC system. It still has sewage problems. It still needs to be painted. It still has lead and asbestos, which could be encapsulated, of course. But the reality is it's still another building we own, just like 400 Mare Island Way. We own them both. Unfortunately, we bought 400 Mare Island Way. I don't think that was a wise and prudent decision. But time will tell as to whether or not it was, because if we can come out of it by making a profit, like any land investor, then maybe it was a good deal. But time's going to tell on that one.
Is it public how much 400 Mare Island Way was bought by Vallejo?
Yes, it was. And I believe it was 13.6 or 14.1. It was somewhere right in there.
14.1 million?
Yeah, yeah.
$14 million?
Yeah. And some brokers have told me that they believe it could be sold and listed for as much as 19 million today. So if that's true, hey, we made a great deal, and maybe we'll make 5 million off of it. I don't know, but time will tell.
If the police did move in, how much would it cost to make it, like, renovate it to? I mean, is there any cost? I mean, would they just walk right in, or?
No, they definitely would not walk right in. There are no holding cells. There are no proper interviews. There are no lineup rooms. There are no squad rooms. So there's no locker rooms. That all has to be rehabilitated. And of course, the other evening we saw a schematic presentation of what that building might look like over time, because the schematic showed some rather mature trees, which don't happen overnight. But there would be an awful lot of improvements that have to be made to that building, no matter who moves in there, if it's a government office. What it's going to cost? Well, the staff has been purporting that it's going to cost $35 million. There was part of the package that was provided to council that one of our very astute public commentator pointed out, said the cost was as high as $95 million to rehabilitate. So let's be fairly accurate and say it's probably somewhere between $35 and $95 million.
Wow.
And of course, that's not all at one time. This is over a period of time. The difficulty is we have other demands that are upon our public dollars. As you know, we're involved in a lot of civil rights, officer-involved shootings. We're trying to rehabilitate and reimagine and rearrange and recreate and rethink the police department. And of course, we do have some wrongful death lawsuits. Certainly the McCoy case that was filed a short time ago is the most recent one. And today, as we speak, yesterday, the Minnesota City Council approved a $27 million settlement in the Floyd case. So, you know, the cost of wrongful death lawsuits for municipalities is going up as we speak. They used to go for maybe 700,000, a million, 2 million. Then they became 4, and now it's 12, and now it's 27. You know, you just never know. It's almost like a runaway verdict time, but it's also a reality. And it's a reality that as a council, we have to be cognizant of and deal with. So does our city manager, of course, and our attorneys, and their insurance companies.
You know, to play devil's advocate, so I see a lot of people on social media that disagree with using that building. But to play devil's advocate, I say if they do use that 400 Mare Island Way, I look at it as only being okay if we're planning to host a lot of events at the marina. I mean, like we've talked, like goofing around, like why can't we bring Mardi Gras to Vallejo and use the whole entire marina and the marsh? And then if we're doing a lot of events every single weekend there's events there, then I could see having a police presence there as a very big time benefit. And I just wanted to get your thoughts.
Well, I do believe that we want to do more public events. I'm not certain that placing a government building, a government occupied building of any type on our prime commercial real estate waterfront property is a wise idea. I've spoken with several people who have been on the council in past years. One or two of them like the idea, but I would say the majority of them do not, and they think it's short-sighted financial planning. Again, nobody has a crystal ball, so we don't know. But you raised an interesting point about community events, Dave. And I'd like to take a moment just to sort of go off the general course of 400 Mare Island Way into that aspect of community events. As you know, we have the Mad Hatter, we have Juneteenth, we have the Indian Powwow, we have Pista Sinai. We have a lot of cultural events that are related to our populace. And in the past, we've had those types of events too, like we used to have the Jazz Festival that was free here in town. And one of the challenges to the creation of those events is how to pay for them. How much are you going to charge people to come in? It's an ongoing challenge. And one of the suggestions that I've looked at, and one of our former mayors looked at, was the creation of something called the Vallejo Foundation. Now, there's a Monterey Foundation. They run the entire jazz festival in Monterey. They don't go hat in hand to the city and say, can we have this amount of money? Instead, they raise money from, well, in their case, across the world. But for Vallejo, we will have to start off with Vallejo residents and investors and create a fund. It'll become a non-endowed profit endowment fund for a while, where we will build up money over, say, 5 to 7, 10 years. And then when that fund becomes large enough, it will be used only to fund these types of cultural events that we value and desire to have here in our community, such as the festivals that we have. Many of those festivals are located at the waterfront. But unless we can find a way to continue to fund them independently of a city undertaking, they probably will also in time go by the boards or fail, because the cost of mounting such an undertaking will become prohibitively expensive. So yesterday I had a discussion with one of our former mayors about creating this foundation. It's something he attempted to do on a limited basis while he was there. And we're kicking that idea around. I'm going to be reaching out to some financial people, some estate planners, some attorneys who counsel in this area as well, to see if we can start to get a group going with this idea in mind. This is obviously not an overnight idea. It's going to take years to come to fruition, certainly well after the time that I'm in office, before it starts to produce results. But if we can build that endowment fund for Vallejo, it will be a tremendous asset for this city, because when you work with a nonprofit, not only in Solano County, but especially in Vallejo, you go look at where are the grants, and you read grants. Well, grants are not submitted because you need the money. Grants are submitted and approved because they match the criteria of the foundation or group that wants to give you the money. You have to appeal to what they want, not the other way around. And when you look at the outlines of what grants are available, you see a lot of them in the Sacramento Valley, in the agricultural areas. You see a lot of them in the greater part of the San Francisco Bay Area, Oakland, Alameda County, Contra Costa County, Monterey, all those. But you don't see hardly any at all in Solano County. We're kind of a grant desert, if you will. And that has to change. Well, we have 121,000+ people here in town, and we do have some good companies that have stepped up to the plate from time to time in the past, and I'm sure would be more than happy to do so as well. So if they see a permanent foundation created, a professionally run and administered foundation, then they'll feel more comfortable about sharing their contributions to that. If you have an estate and you want to provide for something in your estate planning papers, well, that's going to be a great place to do so. So this is for the benefit of our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. It's certainly not going to benefit the people who are probably 40 and above right now.
Oh.
Because it's going to take 10 to 15 years to really get this thing moving.
Oh.
But hopefully a future mayor will come in and see this idea, especially if it's in place already and starting to gather some momentum. So when you ask me about cultural events on the waterfront, I'm not certain that having a police presence on the waterfront is going to make much of an impact in that area in terms of prevention of crime. Instead, I think most event organizers really wish to have their own security, in all honesty. And when you put on an event of that nature, it's not inexpensive to employ the services of the police department in the city where that activity is taking place, because they're working on overtime to start with. And they're paid rather well. So that's a rather high bill. You're probably better off as an event organizer creating something that's going to be controllable by security guards who know what they're doing and know how to do crowd management. There are event promoters who know how to do this. I mean, right now, as we speak, there are the COVID shots going on at the fairgrounds. Well, the county turned to a events organizer out of Los Angeles that puts on concerts to control the crowd. And it's moving really well. They know what they're doing. You know?
Okay.
So you don't have to necessarily go to a police department who's not trained to that much in crowd control. You need somebody who has more awareness as to the subtleties of how to move people and control their movements. And you only need the police there as a backup. And of course, as the chief has rightfully pointed out, the people who are on patrol, the ones that you see when you call and 911, they show up, they're moving around the city in their car. The ones that are in the station house are the planners, the captains, and the lieutenants, and the people who are doing the administrative work. And yeah, they're going to come out too, but they're going to tell all the patrolmen what to do. So having them right next door isn't going to make that much of an impact, in my belief.
To end this on, my last question is, what would you want to see be done with Mare Island, with 400 Mare Island?
Well, I would love to have a high-tech company there, because if you have people who are making a sufficient enough income and they have the desirability to go to lunch or to do an event after work, and there's something in the area, then that would serve as a foundation. It would serve as a starting block. But the reality is if you're an officer and you're working 10-hour shifts or double shifts sometimes, 16 hours, you don't want to go out. You want to go home, go to bed. So you have to look at who has your discretionary income. And those are the tech workers in today's world. Those are the people who are making big bucks with the software and the online companies. They're the modern entrepreneurs. Now, it might not be so in 10 or 15 years, but the office building is adaptable. It can be moved around inside with the steel girders that they have, the aluminum studs that you can move walls around with much easier than with the old wood ones. So it's an adaptable building in that way, and it's not really set up as a police department right now. That's where that $35 to $95 million improvement cost comes in. It would be a lot easier to set it up as a pure office building than it would be a special use building, such as required by a police department or a fire department for that matter.
So you said you would want to see it be leased?
Leased or sold outright, yeah. I mean, if we sell it outright, we got at least get our money back. We did take money out of the general fund from our reserves as well to pay for it. We've sacrificed for it, and you can see that we don't have enough money for our roads. Now, just the other day, the president announced that the city of Vallejo will be getting $24.8 million as part of the stimulus bill. Well, everybody is salivating now about what that $24.8 million can be used for. We don't know if there are any strings on it yet. We'll find out shortly. But hey, that would go a long ways towards rehabilitating the State Farm building for the police department if it shakes out that way. And right now, as I said, the council is evenly divided on it. I would say 4 people want to proceed with that and 3 people do not. Now that can change, and it might or might not, but that's what politics is all about. That's what politicians are all about. Some of them change their positions. And there are a couple of people there who are sort of a swing vote, if you will. That might go one way or the other. We just don't know yet.
Well, to be continued. And you said the next city council meeting will be on this topic?
No, not on this topic. This will come back to us in the form of budget discussions, which is not exactly something that sets most people's desires aflame. But the reality is, you spend your money on your priorities. Now, there are a lot of people who are very passionate about reforming the police department as well. And of course, that would require some funding. There are people who believe that we should fix our roads. That requires funding. There are people who think we should be hiring economic development workers in the planning and the building of the economic development departments because they bring in money for a city. The rest of them don't bring in money. That's where you make your money in the government is by having economic development. And we are woefully understaffed in that area, but other needs keep getting pushed up, and under the whack-a-mole theory, the money goes to those needs.
Okay. Mr. McConnell, thank you for your time. Much appreciated. And until next time, sir.
Well, until next time, I think all City Council would be very appreciative of any comments, honest, constructive suggestions that we can receive, not only on 400 Mare Island Way, but every other aspect that our city government touches in this city, because the 7 people are not anointed with supernatural knowledge. We're just live a day, work a day people like everybody else out there. And let's face it, we can't think of everything. So ideas from the community are not only welcome, but highly appreciated when they're helpful.
Well said, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, too.